Hi, my name is Pastor Russell Bolenberg, and this is Eat This Word, a weekly program where I serve up bite-sized bits of Bible. The verses we are looking at are Hebrews 12, 28, and 29. We began looking at these verses last week. It reads like this: Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful, and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. I said this verse is both encouraging and a little bit frightening. And the frightening part is that last line, this description of God as a consuming fire. And we talked about that last week. I shared a couple biblical pictures of what that looks like. This incredible quote from Annie Dillard reminding us that when we come to church, we ought to come with crash helmets on, that we ought to lash ourselves to the pews because we're about to have an experience of the holy. It's a reminder of just the more we understand God's holiness, the power of His holiness, the more we understand what Jesus has done for us. I think I want to stay on that phrase this week. We'll come to the encouraging part next week. But this week, what I'd like you to notice are the quotation marks. Our God is a consuming fire. The quotation marks are letting us know that the writer of Hebrews is quoting an Old Testament passage when he writes that. And so that passage is Deuteronomy 4, verses 23 and 24. It reads like this: Be careful. This is Moses' speech to the people of Israel just before they enter the promised land. It's part of his speech where he's telling them that he himself will not be entering the promised land. So he's giving them instructions, and he's talking here about idolatry. So he says, be careful not to forget the covenant of the Lord, your God, that he made with you. Do not make for yourselves an idol in the form of anything the Lord your God has forbidden, for the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. And so the warning here, Moses' warning to the people, is against idolatry. And this is, of course, a big theme throughout the Old Testament. The countries that neighbor on Israel worship false gods, and one of the means by which they worship those gods is through the making of idols. And so the Israelites are always being tempted to join into those worship practices by making an idol. This is so important to God, in fact, that the first commandment is you shall not have any other gods before me, and the second commandment is don't make an idol of anything or call it God. And so those two commandments almost sound like the same commandment, but they're important enough for God to separate them out. I think what's going on here, my definition of idolatry works like this. We should not make something that is not God into God, and we should also not make God into something that he's not. See, these are the dangers when it comes to idolatry, especially when you think about this carving of a wooden stick or a stone or painting pictures of God. The danger when we try to make something that's not God into God or a version of God is that we're going to limit God. That we're going to make him something he's not. He's not reduced to a statue. He's not reduced to a wooden figure or a picture on canvas. And so anytime we try to picture God, we are by necessity limiting him. We're putting limits on him. Or we're trying to manipulate him. One of the reasons those other nations, those false religions would make idols is they believed they could then get things either by like a voodoo fetish, that they could manipulate their God into doing things that they wanted, that they could have some control over God. When we try to reduce God to an idol, we try to control him. Or the danger is that we will customize God, that we'll pick and choose the characteristics of God that we like best. Whenever you hear someone say something, well, the God I believe in, fill in the blank, or the God that I follow, we will pick certain characteristics of God, that his love, and we will think that God is permissive, or vice versa. We'll pick God's justice, and we'll assume he hates all the people we hate, and so idolatry is making God, reducing God into something less than he really is. And so we go back to Deuteronomy 4. Moses' instruction is don't do that. Don't fall for that trap. And of course, we're not likely to be carving statues or painting pictures of God, and yet we do those things. We try to limit God. We try to control God. We try to customize him into the kind of God that we like. And the warning here is that the Lord is a consuming fire, which is the quote from Hebrews, will be quoted in Hebrews, and it ends with this line: He's a jealous God. The consuming fire is related to God's jealousy. Jealousy, of course, is a word that doesn't really get great press today. Usually we think of the word jealousy as sort of a version of envy. Somebody else has something, we kind of like it, we wish we had it, we covet it, we envy it. That's a form of jealousy, and it's not good. Or the other way you might use the word jealous is in terms of selfishness, that I have something and I'm not willing to share it with you. I think of my dog Jake. Jake's a 5-year-old schnoodle. He's really kind of an old man at this point in his life. He's pretty easygoing, and yet when it comes to his toys, when other dogs come to visit, he becomes a very jealous dog. If we have a house puppy and, a house guest, a puppy staying with us, and that puppy wants to begin to play with Jake's toys, Jake becomes very angry. He becomes very possessive. He doesn't want to share. And again, that's not a great picture of what it means to be jealous. We don't want to think of God as being tight-fisted or unwilling to share. He's actually a gracious God. He's generous. But there is a sense in which jealousy can be a good thing. When we think about when we have something that truly belongs to us and should not be shared with someone else. And here I think especially of my spouse's love. I am jealous for my wife's love, that I don't want that shared with any other person. And not that I need to control her, and not that I need to be watching over her and mediating all her other relationships, but anyone who would try to infringe upon my spouse's love, I am jealous for that. I want to protect that. I'm committed to a relationship with my wife that's exclusive, and it should be, and both of us are jealous for that. And it's in that sense, I think, that in Deuteronomy 4, when God is described as a jealous God, that we're thinking, God is in covenant with his people. He's in an exclusive relationship with his people. Their love, their commitment, their worship should not be shared with any other God, any other thing that is less than God. Only God is deserving of that commitment, and God is jealous to maintain that relationship with them. And so when we talk about God being a consuming fire, a jealous God, we're talking about his exclusivity, his desire to be in an exclusive relationship with us. It speaks to the depth of his passion for his people. So we go back to Hebrews 12, and I said this can be a sort of frightening image of God, and in some ways we need to be, as we talked about, we need to worship him acceptably with reverence and awe. But in a way, too, this phrase is not so frightening. It speaks to his passion, his commitment to us, his desire to be in an exclusive relationship with those that he calls his own. Hey, thanks for watching this video, and if you appreciate it and would like to see more videos like this, you can help out by hitting the like button or sharing it on your Facebook feed. You can find us on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And especially if you'd go to our Patreon page, there are ways you can either share a one-time gift or commit to be a monthly supporter so that more videos like this can be made.